Welcome to The Secret Life of Mothers. My name is Maggie Gordon-Walker and I'm the founder of Mothers Uncovered. Join us as we explore and share the incredible hidden stories of mothers when life has thrown at them challenge. Discover how the skills we learn in matrescence, which means becoming a mother, can teach us about more than motherhood. They teach us about unconditional love, resilience and acceptance. I'm joined today by Elaine Gregersen. Elaine is an award-winning writer, public speaker, and podcast coach based in the northeast of England. She writes and speaks about baby loss, caring, grief, and creativity. In 2025, she won the Allyson Kent Prize for fearless writing. She has also been shortlisted for the Bath Flash Fiction Prize and the Curae Literary Prize. Her pop culture podcast, The Honeymoon Period, reaches listeners in over 60 countries and has been featured in The Guardian and Film Stories. Elaine, welcome to The Secret Life of Mothers.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I've been a long time listener, and so many people that you've had on the podcast I really admire as well as yourself. So I'm just so happy to be here.
Well, it's lovely to have you here. Checks in the post. No. So, Elaine, where in the country are you based? And is this the same area as you grew up?
Yes, I'm in the northeast of England, and I've always been a northeast girl. Interestingly, I went to Hull for 3 years during my university time, and I have married a man who was born in Hull. Coincidentally, he moved up to Newcastle about a decade ago, and we met in Newcastle. So now I split my time between Newcastle and Hull with my whole family. So yeah, it's a funny old story that the only time I've ever moved away from Newcastle was Hull, and I've ended up marrying a Hull man.
You clearly, that part of the country is where you belong.
Yes. Yeah, I feel very
So
Yorkshire. Very
yeah,
Yorkshire.
well, I'm a very big fan of Yorkshire. I haven't been that many times, but I do like it very much. So, what would we need to know about you, Elaine, to understand how you would describe yourself as a mother?
It's such a good question, isn't it? I was thinking about this in the car, actually. I do a lot of thinking in the car. And there was a song that came on by Hurricane Number One, which is a song from the 90s called Step Into My World. And I often think about that song when I'm trying to explain what it is like to be in my world as a mother. My world as a mother looks very different to what I ever imagined it to be. You know, you have all sorts of imaginations, don't you, of what your life as a mother would be. And I suppose, ironically, given that I had twins, my world as a mother is split into two parts. And the first part began when I gave birth to my twins very prematurely, and went up to the day that my eldest twin died. That was sort of like the first part of motherhood for me, in suddenly becoming a bereaved mother. And then the next part of my mothering life with my youngest twin, who is profoundly disabled, is being a mother to a profoundly disabled child. So I am both a bereaved mother for the child that I have lost and a parent carer, which is something I had a term I hadn't even heard until I came into this part of the journey, to my younger by 2 minutes child, because he was only 2 minutes behind his elder brother.
Right. Wow. Yes. No, I can see that. Yeah. Most people think of motherhood in terms of, if they have more than one, it's kind of
Mm.
after one child, after the second child, but that's nothing compared to what you've been through. And yeah, just for anyone listening, obviously Elaine is going to talk about the baby loss quite a lot. So
Mm.
if that's going to be difficult for you to hear, then you can part ways with us now. But it's a really important story, and I'm so honoured that she's able to share it with us today. So, yeah, let's get a bit more into your story. So, you told me you got pregnant quite quickly after
Mm.
you and your husband got together, or maybe after you married or after you got
Yes, it
together.
was after our marriage. We delayed our honeymoon by a few months, and we went to Las Vegas. And a lady in Las Vegas, when I was up a very tall tower, asked me why I was there. And I said, oh, I'm on honeymoon. And she said, oh, strange and wonderful things happen in Las Vegas. And as soon as I got home, I found out I was pregnant.
So you had an early scan, you told me. So what were the reasons for that, and what were you told at this early scan?
So I think we were very naive. We're quite, I think we're a pair of teenagers, really, me and my husband, and I think we're quite childlike in many ways, and we're not at the time. I think we weren't very good at being adults, and we were not really. I think we went into it not really knowing what parenthood would be like at all. And we had heard on the grapevine from our friends that some of them had been for an early scan as sort of like to confirm the pregnancy, a private scan that they paid for to confirm it, but also to sort of know what was going on and maybe to know what how far along they were and things like that.
Yeah.
So we, like, again, very naively, we just jumped on a bus, paid for this early scan, jumped on a bus, and off we went down the road and went to. It was a very strange place, actually. When we turned up, I thought, oh, this is not what I kind of expected it to be. It was almost like one of those buildings that you had at school when they didn't have enough rooms. You know, one of those sort of prefab buildings that you walked in. You thought,
Mm.
this is not what I thought I was coming to. But anyway, we went in. I was bursting for the loo because you were having this scan. You weren't allowed to go to the loo, so I was absolutely desperate for the loo, and I'd been on the bus the whole time, really, really desperate. Mark had to quiz me on the bus to keep my mind off it, so he was asking me like how many WWE wrestlers could I name to try and keep my mind off it. So yeah,
You are
very,
nerds, aren't you?
yeah, we are. It's incredibly teenage, childlike, nerdy kids. That's who we are. And when we got to the scan, she did the sonographer did the scan, and the first words out of her mouth, and I think actually the last words, to be honest with you, because it was very quick, was only one, only one baby. That was it. And we went off with our little print off, which it was so early. I think it was about 6 weeks. So early. It was just like a splodge,
Yeah.
and off I went with my splodge, knowing that I was then pregnant. I had this confirmation that I was pregnant, but also not convinced that the splodge I could see on this piece of paper was right. Something about it just didn't look right to me. It just didn't look like a fetus. And so I would Google early scan and look at the photos. And it was quite obvious to me that my splodge just didn't look as it should. And obviously, like I say, with all these things, hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? But it looked like the splodge had either an extra head or an extra bum, which is
Yeah.
probably what was happening at that time. But
Yeah.
only one, so that was it. Only one. We're just having one. Fine, and off we go and wait for the 12-week scan.
Mm. It's a very odd exchange altogether. I mean, only one. It sounds like a negative remark anyway.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, I've no idea how common that is at such an early scan
Mm,
to be wrong about whether it's a multiple pregnancy. You'd kind of think,
yes.
presumably, this sonographer looks at lots of them. If they weren't sure, why are they so confidently saying? I mean, surely an early scan, what you want to hear is the heartbeat of the
Yes,
baby.
yes.
Just like,
And I
yes,
don't remember
there's
any
a
of that.
heartbeat. I can hear a heartbeat. That's all you need to know because you
Yeah.
can't really see much else. It seems very odd altogether, to be honest.
Yeah, it was a strange experience. I do think of it quite often, that strange sort of cabin that I went to, and the exchange of the money, and then coming out with this picture that I knew just didn't look right, and that being the thing that remained in my mind. I don't remember the sort of the relief of hearing the heartbeat or the excitement. I just remember that comment of only one.
Yes, well, particularly as you've just reminded, you had to pay for this. You'd
Mhm.
expect a bit better customer service, frankly. Anyway, that was what was happening. So yes, your instinct knew that you were not looking at just one baby. So
Yes, something
you
wasn't
learned
there.
that you were in fact carrying twins. So that was at
Mhm.
the 12-week scan, was it?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So what you told me is that obviously it started to make you feel anxious because of where you live. There wasn't going to be
Mm,
space. You'd have to buy two of everything. Could you
mhm.
talk us through a little bit more about that?
I think it's something that isn't spoken about very often, and it's certainly not something that I've heard in my world. But multiple pregnancies can be, you're not expecting it. You're not expecting to hear that. Even though I knew in the back of my head, I think I had an inkling that something was different about this pregnancy. Even though I'd never been pregnant before, something was different. My sickness was just horrendous. I mean, absolutely horrendous. It started really early. I had tested positive very, very early, like within days of conception, almost like I was testing positive. I was, this is strange. Why am I getting these high levels of hormone? Why am I getting this sickness? Um, it was all very, very odd. It just didn't feel right to me. So when the sonographer at the 12-week scan turned the screen around, she took her time, and I thought, oh, something's different here. And I sort of
Mm.
picked up on there was an air, and she turned the screen around. I knew before I even saw the screen. She turned the screen around. She said, "I've got something very special to tell you." And that was it. And I think at that moment you are meant to feel this this delight or excitement or wow, this is so special. But I distinctly remember my stomach dropping and thinking, oh no, oh no. And I remember walking to the car park with these reams of photographs of the kids. Just they'd given them us for free. You were meant to pay with a little machine, you meant to bring some coins, and we brought our coins along to pay for our photograph. And we didn't have to pay. And I kept saying, oh, I've got these coins, like in my handbag, all these pound coins. I've got these coins, I've got these coins. And she's like, oh, no, no, you don't have to pay because you're
Oh, because
special,
you had twins. Ah, I
Yeah,
see.
so you're
Interesting.
special.
Okay.
So this idea
Yeah.
of being special because you're having a multiple pregnancy, but I distinctly remember walking to the car and swearing, like just swearing over and over again.
Mm.
And I remember thinking, I only wanted one. I only wanted one. How are we going to cope? And obviously the next moment is two of everything, two cots,
Mm.
two car seats. We were in a small rental at the time. We had no room for two kids. Um, and also, my mind went towards like childcare, two nursery fees, all of that. I'd already heard from, friends that how difficult it was and how expensive it was for childcare as well. And thinking about, very selfishly thinking about my own career, thinking about our life and how that would change. But the financials was a real one for me, and thinking I don't know how we're going to manage having to pay for everything together rather than spacing it out as it would be if we'd had two children of different ages.
Mm. Yeah, no, it's a good point, and I suppose because the increase in IVF means that there are
Mm.
probably more twin and even triplet births than there used to be.
Yes,
And yeah,
yes.
it never occurred to me until now because it doesn't until you meet someone. It's just like there really should be more funding,
Mm,
more government help for people who have twins, because
mm.
like you say, you're going to have to buy two, well, not literally everything, not all the clothes, but
Yeah,
two of a
yeah,
lot of things that you're
yes.
just not might be equipped to, particularly if you have IVF, you have to face that as a real possibility you're going to have twins. But
Absolutely.
if it's a
Yes.
natural conception, then yeah. Wow.
Mm,
um so yes, so now's the part where we get to the darker part of what we're
mm,
talking about. So at 24 weeks pregnant, you had a routine check. 'Cause I think you were being
mm,
scanned and seen more frequently because you was a
mm,
twin pregnancy. So it took a darker turn. Can you tell us more about the events as they
mm.
unfolded?
Yeah, it almost played out a little bit like a film. And when I tell the story, which I don't get to do that often, so it's always a pleasure to be able to tell it. When I tell the story, I do often remark that it feels almost it's coincidental. All these little coincidences came together on that day. But it was in our local hospital for a routine check. They thought I had gestational diabetes, and they were checking me over because I had been so sick. That really came into play that day because during the gestational diabetes test, you're not allowed to eat, so you're very hungry, and the only way I was getting through the sickness, because I was just permanently nauseous, and I was being sick all the time, was to eat like crisps and toast. So I was on crisps and toast, ready salted crisps and toast. And that morning I hadn't been able to have anything at all. And just got to the end of the test. I was just coming up to the end of it, and unfortunately, I was sick all over the floor, which I'm sure the other women in the room, all the other pregnant women in the room, were delighted by. And I was so embarrassed by it because you're sitting there and everyone with their lovely bumps and everything, and you're the one being sick on the floor. And coincidentally, that day, the twin midwife, who we didn't get to see very often because she worked around lots of different hospitals in the area, she was there that day, and I wasn't meant to see her that day, but she was there, and she took me over into her room and she sat me down. And because I am who I am, I just started chatting to her, like sort of embarrassingly chat, oh, blah, blah, blah. And she was like, are you doing okay? And I said, oh, I thought I'll make a joke. I'll make a joke. This is how I get through it. And I said, oh, well, I'm having this terrible bladder weakness at the moment. And these twins are pushing on my bladder, and I'm probably going to have the special pants for the rest of my, I was like making this joke out of it. And she started to ask me some questions, which I eventually realised were very medical questions. And at the end of this series of questions that she asked me, she said, do you have your car with you? And I said, oh, yes, in the car park. She said, I'd like you to take the car up to this other hospital, a bigger hospital up north, which was like like an emergency care hospital, which also had like a maternity wing and I didn't know it at the time, but a neonatal unit attached to it. And she said, I'd like you to go up there now, please, which I was not happy about because I was a terrible driver. I'm much better now. And the idea of having to get from this local hospital up to this other hospital, I mean, it was a bit like Mr. Bean in the car because we didn't have the sat nav. I went round a roundabout about 3 times trying to get into the car park of this other hospital. So I wasn't chuffed about it. And I hadn't had anything to eat, so I'm starving. I was like, all right then, I'll go up. And she had said, "Oh, I think I think there's a chance that your waters might be leaking," which I did not believe for a moment. I said, "No, that can't be right." And when I got to that bigger hospital, it was very quiet that day, which was lovely. And I sat and waited. I had some tests done, and then because I've seen a lot of casualty, I knew that when the senior consultant that I hadn't seen before walked into the room, that something was wrong. So I knew immediately that he was not there to tell me happy news. And he did start he did start his sentence by going, "I'm very sorry to have to tell you that your waters are leaking." And no one knew what would happen from that point on. I was very jolly about it all. I remember texting people like, say, "Oh, I've got on this lovely bed and everything's fine." They've brought me some chocolate because they brought me some chocolate because I was really hungry. And they said that we met someone from the neonatal unit there, but she had said to us as the head of the neonatal unit there, said, we wouldn't be able to take the twins because they would be too early for this neonatal unit. So, and I remember her saying to me, the longer you can last, the better it will be. So I had that in the back of my head and I've remembered that ever since. But unfortunately, I didn't last very long because at midnight that night, they kept me in overnight. At midnight that night, my waters broke. Henry, my eldest twin, gave me an almighty kick at midnight, and boom, that was it. Water's gone. And within 7 hours, I had given birth to both of them, but at a different hospital. So in the middle of the night, the ambulance crew came and took us to a hospital in Sunderland, 20 miles down the road, and I gave birth in that hospital. So I was in 3 hospitals that day.
So yeah, so your husband yeah, he must have been by your side, very frightened by everything that was going
Yes.
on.
Oh, I
Yeah.
know, and I always feel for Mark. I really do. I know everything's focused on the mother, which in one way you think, well, that's sort of right. I'm the one going through the physical stuff. But he was at home when my waters broke because there was nowhere for him to stay in the hospital. And it's one thing that I really have a strong feeling about is there's nowhere for partners to go, and therefore partners go home because why would they want to lie on a floor? And actually, at one point during COVID, he wasn't allowed with us at all. When I later, when we had lots of hospital sort of interactions with hospitals later on during COVID, and that was really awful for me and for him, and I know for lots of people during that time. But there was nowhere for him to be in the hospital, and I said, "Well, why would you stay here with me? I'm going to be coming back tomorrow. We probably have to go back in for more tests." I really did not understand the gravity of the situation. And I
Mm.
did not appreciate the fact that my waters could break at any minute. And then they did.
Well, why would you? I mean, it
Yeah.
must be fairly rare, I'm thinking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
don't think the
presumably
hospital thought that.
it was because you were carrying twins, but you, or do you
Mm.
think it might have happened anyway? I mean, you can't ever tell, but presumably that's the reason they gave. Yeah.
They said the risk factor for a multiple pregnancy is so high, and it's something I've learned after having the boys was that I did not appreciate just how much more complicated and how much more there is to a multiple pregnancy. And my multiple pregnancy was probably in the highest, well, it was in the highest risk category because they were identical twins and they were together. There was no separation of them. Um, and that, as I learned later, just even added to the risk factor. And it is just premature ruptures of the membranes. That's what I was, that's what it's down on all my forms. But there is an increased risk, and I was very large. One of my friends said I had two bumps. I had a little bump at the bottom and a little bump at the top, and together I made this giant bump. So I knew they were big babies and there was a lot going on there compared to a single pregnancy.
Yeah. So yeah, so you were down the road, different hospital, gave birth to your twins. You want to carry on the story there?
Mm. And at the time, um, I did not know if they were still with me. And I think as a protection mechanism, I sort of in my brain, I kind of came to a conclusion that they weren't, and that someone was going to come and tell me. I was in a room with Mark at that point. Um, After the birth, I was taken into another room, and I was there for quite a while. And I had come to the conclusion in my own mind that they were no longer with us. And therefore, I said to Mark, well, we need to name them now because I don't want them to not have a name at this stage. So we named them very quickly. And then eventually, someone must have come and told me. I can't remember this at all. My memory is very blurry of that time. But someone must have come and told me that they were in the neonatal unit in that hospital. And we went to see them. And of course, I have no clothes, I have no bag. Mark had to go to the local shop and he bought me a giant Fred Flintstone nightie. And that's what I wore because what else was I going to wear post-birth but a giant Fred Flintstone nightie? And that's what I wore when I walked into the neonatal unit to see them. And they were in two separate incubators. They were very small. If you hold your hand out, that's the size that they were the size of your hand. So that's always the way I remember it because I remember putting my palm up towards each of them, and that was, how big they were. They were both under 2 pounds, and it was a very, I mean, if I say very difficult time, it doesn't cover it, I suppose, but it was a roller coaster of a time, and both of them were very poorly. There were all sorts of things going on within those first few days. Blake, who's my younger twin, he was often the most concern to the hospital staff. And Henry seemed to pull around actually quite quickly. And there was one day, which I don't remember, but Mark does, where they even took him off the ventilator. He was doing so well, they thought he could breathe by himself. This tiny, tiny
Goodness.
little thing. But
Mm.
he then didn't manage, and he was reintubated. But unfortunately, by day 5, Henry took a real turn for the worse. And we had a phone call. We were staying in some accommodation nearby, near the hospital, and we had a phone call from one of the neonatal nurses very early in the morning, and we were told to come over and that things were really, really not looking well. And I got the impression at that time that yeah, this was it. This was the end. And we spoke to the staff there. We made the decision to and this is a phrase that I love and I always use, to reorientate Henry's care, to reorientate the medical care around him, so that he could die. And that's what happened. So Henry died on day 6 of his life. And We said goodbye to him. We drove home. I drove us back up to Newcastle. And a couple of hours later, we drove back to Sunderland to see Blake because, of course, we had another child in the neonatal unit. And I think that's what I think lots of people, when they've been through this, they have an opportunity to go back home and to take some time. And one of the things that I always remember about our experience was that there was no time. We had to go back. We had to go back to the place where he died. We had to go back into the room where he was alive a few hours before and get on with it. And that's what we did.
Wow. My goodness. Yeah. There
Mm.
are no words. I mean, that must have
Yeah.
been horrendous, really. All of those
Yeah.
different emotions going on, and the anxiety about Blake still,
Mm.
and the
Mm-hmm.
hope that he would be okay, the grief you were
Mm-hmm.
both carrying. Yeah.
Mm.
So Blake was there. So this is day 6, you say, of their lives.
Yes. Yeah. And Blake then became very poorly afterwards. And there was a moment in that hospital where oh, he's very cheeky. It's Blake. There was a moment where they said, "Look, things are also not looking good with Blake. We'd like to give you a little bit more time with him because we know he didn't have very much time with Henry. So let's get till 8 o'clock tonight. And if we're in the same situation at 8 o'clock, it's going to be a similar process as with Henry." And so I sat with him all afternoon. I got everyone prepared. I was like, yeah, right, I think we're coming to the end of the journey now with Blake as well. And sort of 7:30, I'm sitting there, 7:45, 7:55. And at 8 o'clock, he pulled round. He just got better. He just got better. And the consultant would come, they would do all the tests. And he just came up to me and he said, yeah, he's looking good. And as I was like,
Wow.
well, another hour. I sat with them all night that night because I just didn't believe it. And they always called it the terms of like doing a gas. So they would do a gas at 2 o'clock, which is like a blood test. They would do this gas, and it's like he would have it's a good gas. It's a good gas. I was like, how can it be a good
That's what you
gas?
have down the pub. Oh, I had a
Yeah,
good guess down the pub.
exactly. It's like it
Strange,
can't
what
be
an
a
odd
good
remark.
gas. So
Wow.
he has been that way ever since, I have to say. That is the way that he has he's made my mothering journey very complicated because he likes to swing up and then swing down and then come back. So yeah, Blake then spent 120, well, in total he spent 123 days in the neonatal unit. A couple of days after that moment where we thought we had lost him and he came round at 8 o'clock, we moved to a hospital in Newcastle because he was going to have surgery. Funnily enough, that surgery didn't happen because again he came round. But then he had some very, very difficult experiences throughout the rest of the sort of the 3 months, and he did have multiple surgeries. I mean, he was in and out of that theatre, like you don't know what, and wheeling him down to the theatre and saying goodbye and not knowing if he was coming back. We went through that over. I mean, I think it was 5 times we did that over and over and over again. But happily, he came home on his due date. So exactly on his due date, he came home.
Goodness. So, and what weight was he by that point?
Oh, he was still tiny. I think he was about 5 pounds at that stage because I was still buying him tiny baby clothes. I think I'd gone to John Lewis and tried to find like the smallest
Yeah.
smallest vest, and the only thing they had was a little vest. And the hospital were fabulous. I mean, obviously, the hospital were absolutely fabulous, and they would give us clothes that had been donated by other parents. We had this beautiful
Wow.
lion top with like my best friend's my dad, and all of that sort of stuff that we just hadn't got our head around getting. And I would come in, and he would be dressed in all these little outfits, but they were massive. So his little arms were, there was just all this room where arms and legs. I mean, he's huge now. He's
Goodness.
absolutely huge. He's
Is he?
going to be up to my chin soon, I'm sure. He's
Oh,
a very tall boy.
wow. So, yes, Blake is profoundly disabled, obviously, because of his difficult start in life. Can you share some details of this and how it impacts your life as a family?
Yeah, and I think it goes back to your first question about, this mothering journey, because I often feel like I'm balancing two things at once. And on a difficult day, I can feel full of grief for my child who has died. But then I also have to do things. So I have to take my son to hospital appointments. I have to think about his physio and his occupational therapy. I have to think about his speech and language. I have to think, have I put everything on his wheelchair that he needs for school that day? Balancing those two things can be very difficult. Things have well, if I go back a bit, there was one point when he was very young, when the first few years after he'd come out of hospital, where the number of appointments I was taking him to had got to a stage where I just couldn't manage anymore. And I had what one week I had 7 appointments in 3 days across different hospitals and other
Mm.
services. And so I was just continually in this medical world, hearing. Essentially, I was going to list all the things, but essentially pick any part of the body, and that would be the hearing, eyes, speech, lungs. You could go through everything. Head, brain, all of those things. Blake has, from top to toe, internal, external. He has had everything done to him. He's gone on to have more surgery after he came out of the hospital. But what I was going to say was things have calmed in the last few years since he's gone to school. And he attends a specialist school with people who absolutely love him and have his best interests at heart and know him and know us. I think they parent us quite a lot as well. And that they say that's part of what they're there for. I've had lots of breakdowns in car parks in front of his teachers. If a wheelchair breaks, which it did do a couple of months ago, his wheelchair broke, and I had no way of transporting him to school. I had no way of transporting him out of the house, and it was a week until we got a replacement. All of those things, they are there when I'm having that meltdown, trying to
Yeah,
get on the phone to someone. It has been the
yeah,
most challenging period of my life, and I will often say that whilst Henry's death was obviously an awful moment, it was one thing, it was one event. Blake's care is continuing, and the fight, and I know people who've been on your podcast before have spoken so eloquently about this, the fight for support and services and understanding and access and inclusivity is part of my everyday experience and
yeah.
part of his everyday experience as well.
Is Blake verbal or not? No.
He isn't. He's noisy.
Noisy,
He's very
right.
noisy. He's
So
a
his own
very noisy
form of verbal.
child.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's very communicative. So he
Okay.
will he will hold on to you if he wants something. He'll find you with his hands. He has a habit of nibbling my toe because he likes to roll on the floor. He has a habit of nibbling my toe if I'm in the middle of doing something with work. 'Cause he knows I've got a laptop on my knee a lot of the time. So I'll be doing some work. And if I'm not paying him enough attention and he wants the television changed, I will feel a nibble on my toes. He is very, very cheeky.
Wow.
So he has his own way, and I've learnt through the schooling and through our experience that he has a multi-communicative approach. So he uses different forms of communication to let it be known what it is he wants. He's a very happy boy. I always say
So
that.
he's about 7 now, isn't he? I
Yeah,
think
he
you said
is.
7.
Yeah. He's such a happy boy, and he's so clever in finding that we haven't taught him that. We haven't taught him to, find our hand if he
Mm.
wants something. We haven't sort of modeled that to him at all. We haven't modeled, the use of teeth to communicate, all of those sorts of things. But he's done it himself. He's worked it out himself. He knows what works. He knows what gets our attention, and he knows how to tell us whether he's happy with the situation or whether actually he's a bit grumpy about it.
Human instinct for survival is
Hmm.
incredibly strong.
Hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you made the decision, I'm assuming, that you weren't going to have any more pregnancies after this one. Yeah, I'm not, yeah,
Yeah.
understandable.
You know,
You had your
I would have
plate
loved it.
was full.
I would have loved
Yeah.
it. And then it's something I've really tussled with.
Hmm.
And it's been a long journey for me to really come to terms with that because as soon as we brought Blake home, I just wanted to have more kids. So I was just like, well, I'm a mum. I'm a really good mum. Right, let's have more kids. My husband w was more pragmatic about the situation. I was like, we're
Yeah.
going to have our house adapted. This is, we are dealing with these two things of this bereavement and also Blake's needs, and we didn't know how much Blake would need. And actually, it's turned out that Blake's needs were far more complicated than we knew. So I think for us, we made the right decision. But there will always be a part of me that would have loved to have had more children because I get so much from being a mum, and I love being a mum. And I don't think mums say this very often, but I do. But I'm a really good mum. I'm a really, really good mum, and I've learned that I'm a really good mum in a very, very difficult situation, and that gives me a lot of pride in myself. I've been handed a very difficult set of cards, and even under that circumstance, I know I'm a good mum.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good because you had so much taken away from you
Mm,
by what happened. So, the fact you've claimed that back and you own it,
mm,
I think is very powerful for sure. So, obviously, becoming a mother changes everyone, but in your case, it was all consuming, what you went through and has obviously impacted your life. It has to, your life has had to change because of Blake's needs. So we like to talk about post-traumatic growth as opposed to stress because I think, it is this is the only life we have. If you
yeah,
spend the whole time bemoaning your lot, then
yeah.
it's just not much point, is there? So how has your experience of becoming a mother of Blake, who's disabled, and experiencing the loss of Henry changed you and led to you doing the work that you do now or the advocacy?
And I love that framing of it as well, this idea of growing and developing, because that's how I feel now. I feel like a completely different person to who I was before I had the boys. I think that moment that where I make the joke about, the guy who looks like someone from Casualty coming in, that moment was a sliding doors moment for me. And from being one person who, was getting along with life and doing well and, not really knowing much about the world to now to having experience of the world. I feel I'm braver. I'm braver than I've ever been. I can articulate my needs more. I think before I would have just gone along with things. I wouldn't have asked questions. Um, I I now have a level of advocacy within me that I've had to learn because of Blake's needs and trying to, fight various systems and get support and get things in place for him. So I know I am braver now than I have ever been, but I also feel more authentic as a pet. I feel like myself. I feel like I can be myself, and I don't have to just go along with what perhaps, I might have done in the past. I've brought more of my personality to the fore. The fact that I love pop culture, and I'm like you say, I'm a real nerd, and I've embraced that now since having Blake, because Blake shows me that he is just who he is,
Yeah.
and so I can be who I am, and it doesn't matter. And so we live a very I was about to say we live a very authentic life. Sounds a bit weird, but we live as who we are. We are who we are, and we embrace who we are. And that he's really taught me that to be who I am, and not to worry about looking a bit silly at times or looking a bit daft. To speak to people actually in the way that I really want to speak to them rather than sort of putting on a voice and pretending. So bravery, certainly that I've grown as a person in terms of bravery, but also just being myself. I feel very comfortable in myself now.
That is amazing. You look it. Yeah, you do. You look. You very. You're full of joy.
Mm.
What's been in a very tricky situation, you've made it into something positive. Because Blake's, his life is probably limited, isn't it? So
It
you're
is.
living with that knowledge.
It is, and this is not to say that, every day I'm sort of I think I am quite a positive person, and I lecture and I walk into the room and I read. I like a stage. I like a performance. I use my hands a lot. But there are days, and actually this week, yesterday, I just had a big cry because I needed a big cry because I felt a bit griefy. And there are always moments where, and they come very randomly in the day. There are moments where I think, you know, will he be here next year? Will he be here the year after? Who will care for him? If I'm not here, who will care for him? All of those things that I never thought I would have to think about when I thought about becoming a mum, they are in the back of my head constantly. So it's always buzzing away. There's always something there, which is why I think it's really important to talk about it, because I think sometimes you can look at me and you can think, oh, she hasn't got a care in the world, and
Mm.
but running underneath the surface, there are always those things.
Yeah, yeah. So tell me about some of the things you do as a family. Do you go out to places? Share perhaps something that you do together.
We do. We actually we have become braver as a family in terms of what we do and where we go, and I think we've we've thought very carefully about what actually serves us and what I think in the past, for example, I would walk past parks and I would think, oh, he's going to hate this park. There's nothing
Mm.
here for him. There's no accessible swing. There's all these bunch of mums in the corner that all know each other. I don't know them. But I'd make myself go into the park because I felt that's what mums did. They took their kids to the park. And he never enjoyed it. So now we don't go to the park, but we do go to his favourite cafe, who absolutely love him and embrace him, help me get the wheelchair through the door, make a little space for him, know his order because he's very specific about his order. Know his
What does
order.
he have?
He has banana bread.
Nice, good choice. With
He loves
chocolate
his
chips
banana.
in or just
No,
neat?
just neat banana bread. Sometimes it's toasted and sometimes it isn't. But they know him and they know his name and they say hello and they use Makaton and the signs and they ask how he is and how he wants to be communicated with. So, places like that are
Mm.
just amazing. I mean, I cannot stress how amazing it is. And we've found spaces like that. But he's an adventurous boy. He loves being outside. So we're always walking. We'll walk along the coastline near us. We walk in country parks. We go around big lakes. We're always outdoors. And he loves to be in the car. So, and I love that for him because he spent so long in a hospital. That's all he knew with the four walls of the neonatal unit, which were quite rightly, very dark, very dim because of all the babies in there and very quiet apart from the hum of the machines and the beeping of the machines. And when I first took him outdoors, like for the first time in his life, I took him into a car park. That's with this, the car seat. We just had this child still attached to oxygen because he had to bring an oxygen tank with him, and took him into the car park. And I thought, wow, this is his first experience of outside. And he's just in
Mm.
this terrible hospital car park, just full of all these fumes. And we put him in the car, and I did think, what is he going to think? I mean, he's so tiny, but what is he going to think being in a car? But because
Mm.
we've taken him in a car from him, even I would hoist the oxygen tank with us everywhere. I'd lay it down on the back seat. I would always take him out in the car. He's come to love being in the car. One car we got, we've not got it now, but we got a car specifically with a sunroof, so that you could see out of the sunroof. But we
Oh,
can't get
yeah.
that version anymore, which I'm really annoyed about. And
Oh,
he keeps looking up, going, "What is the sunroof?"
oh, oh. What
I
about a
know.
convertible? No, that's too impractical,
This
is it?
this is it, isn't it? It's what you have to think about.
Oh, well, that's lovely to think of him sitting looking up. That's really nice. Yeah. And between you and your husband, how do you manage things? Do you do most of the daily care, or is it fairly shared?
From day one, and I know this isn't always the way. From day one, Mark has said to me, "We are a team. We will do this together." And even though I have gone part-time and Mark is full-time, we still do everything 50-50. So even to this day, like 7 years in, Blake has to have a monitor. for when he sleeps. We share the inevitable waking up because Blake is not a sleeper. We've learned that after 7 years, he is not a sleeper. So we will take turns each night without fail. We will take turns, that person takes the monitor that night, that person takes the monitor. But it's not a fixed system where, let's say, someone's having a really difficult day. Maybe they haven't been able to get some sleep themselves, and the other person just turns over and goes, "Well, it's your night." It's always you're the first port of call, but if you can't manage, or if you just, I mean, it happens all the time, one or the other of us will just have a meltdown and we can't go, "Oh, it's too difficult," or "I just don't know what to do. He's been awake for 4 hours." The other person will then switch on and will go, "Right, go into the spare room, put your head down, pretend the monitor doesn't exist. I will take over from this point in time." We have
Wow.
always done everything 50-50, even though on the face of it, I have more time because I went part-time from work and he did not. And I'm always deeply grateful and happy that I have a co-parent that has never ever turned around to me and said, "Well, you're part, oh, it just is, it is always," and he says it's his phrase, "We are a team." And I think that's how we've got through it, to be honest with you. Through all of the really awful things that have happened to us, we've always been together.
Yeah. So the twins were born in 2019.
Yeah.
So on the day before, if you were to write a letter to yourself with some advice, what do you think you would write?
Oh, it's such a difficult one, isn't it?
Uh,
I think I would tell myself to just be myself, and actually not give any advice other than that, to be myself, because being myself has is what has got me through it. Just
yeah.
by I didn't need to do anything. I didn't need to learn anything new or do anything new. And I sometimes think that when you have a bereavement, people expect you to suddenly become a new person. Maybe you might, and also this is no shade on anyone who does this, by the way. You might climb a mountain, or you might chuck yourself out of an aeroplane, and do these new fantastical things. And I just never felt like that was what I needed to do. I just wanted to just remain myself. And I think
Mm,
that's what I would say. I would say, whatever comes, whatever is around the corner, all you have to be is yourself, and you will get through it.
yeah. No. And yeah, lastly, we like to think of a matrescence disc. So matrescence meaning becoming a mother, as if you were on desert island discs. What would be your matrescence disc that you associate with you as a mother?
You cannot understand how long it has taken me
Mm.
to work out which one to go for, because
Um,
we're such a musical family. Not that we've got a musical bone in our body, but we love to sing in this family. And poor Blake, I mean, I don't think he listens to anything beyond 1999, because that's when me and my husband sort of stopped, you know, listening to new music. But he gets to listen to a lot of 90s. But the track that I've gone for is, it's actually a cover of an Argent song, and it's Kiss's "God Gave Rock and Roll to You Too," which is the song that they used in Bill and Ted, in the Bill and Ted film. And it is the song that I played when Blake moved to the second hospital, when we moved to the hospital nearest us, and it's a song that I played on a road. There's a long stretch of road that goes from our house into the town, and I would play that song very, very loudly, and I would sing along to it as I was going to and from the hospital, and I would go up and down all day. And there's a little line at the end of it. So it's lots of singing, and then at the end, the singer does this kind of like sing speaking, like he's like talking to you in American, and he says that, "I know life can sometimes get hard, and I know life can sometimes be a drag, but people, we've been given a gift, we've been given a road." And he says, "And that road's name is," and then he screams, "Rock and roll." And for me, it just embodied that there's a universal thing, I think, in pop culture, in entertainment, in music, in TV and film, that we have been given a gift of culture, and culture can often be the thing that helps us through those times. And I really love the sentiment of the song, that we've been given this gift.
Fantastic. Elaine, you do quite a lot of writing, don't you? Is there somewhere where our listeners can find your writing, or an Instagram account or something you want to share?
Yeah, the best place to find me is on Instagram. I am at Elaine G Writes. So Elaine G Writes. And you can find me on there. And I do have a newsletter. You can find the link to that in my Instagram account. And I often share a lot of my writing on Instagram. So that's the best place to find me.
Brilliant. Elaine, it's been a joy and a privilege to hear your story. Thank you for sharing it.
Thank you. It's been fabulous.